Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the purpose of laws and how they've changed, certainly in recent times at least, or for example, since say, the 1960s as an example, through to the present day. And they've been, I picked that time because it provides the greatest contrast of laws between the then and the now. So let me talk a little bit about that, and also the purpose of laws. Now, typically laws are determined by the elites as being either to protect what the elites have, their property and their castles or their mansions or whatever the case may be, or laws are used to, as they mostly are today, to impose the will of the elites onto the masses in terms of bringing about societal change for the benefit of the elites. So let me just go through some of that. Yeah, you do get situations where laws are made for the common good, to keep law and order, for example. It could be something simple, ranging from say cars that can't park for more than 1 hour out the front of a strip of shops. So that gives the shopkeeper the constant turnover of customers, for example, rather than people park there all day and then real shoppers or real customers can't park in the street and that sort of thing. Up to more serious laws, for example, don't go around murdering people. I mean, if you murder in a society where there's near full employment, if someone gets murdered, then the state has lost a taxpayer, a business has lost a worker, the expertise they have is lost to the community, that sort of thing. So murder is a big deal, really, in the wider societal sense. Whereas murder in a country where people are dying like flies, and you step over dead bodies in the street, then murder, assuming it's one of the lower orders, then who really gives a shit? So there's those sorts of things. So the laws can reflect various realistic situations, as well as the desire and need and determination of the elites. But let me have a look at laws sort of going over the years. I remember when I was a kid, when I was a young kid here, so I'm probably 5 years old or thereabouts, but I do remember this fairly vividly, really. There was a guy in the street who had received, so it was alleged, had received stolen property. Now it was a camera or part of a camera, something like that, and he bought it legitimately. Someone had advertised it in some sort of second-hand thing, and he bought it from them, paid them the money, and that wasn't in dispute. But the original item had been stolen. Now, the thief who'd stolen it was caught and said, well, I sold it to that guy down the road there. Now, I don't know if the people were known to each other and like that, but the police then arrested this guy who had the camera, and the charge in the day was receiving stolen property. I'm not sure whether that really, I actually went back to read the law as it was then. I think that was a bit of a stretch, but nonetheless, so serious was that robbery and theft and property, that's so seriously as I thought of back then, that even receiving stolen property, and back in the time, I don't think it was more than $20 or something, but the guy ended up going to prison for 6 months. That's how seriously it was viewed at the time, even you're secondary to the offence, and as in the guy didn't steal it or anything, and yet receiving stolen property, got 6 months in prison for that, which seems astonishing. Now such was the effect of that it was like his the guy had no moral value to society. He was almost shunned, and he could only get the most menial jobs. And I remember the adults at the time talking about it and saying, what a low-life scum he was, and you could never be trusted. Check your, if you see him in the street, check your wallet to make sure it hasn't been stolen or something. That I remember as a kid even thinking, this is a bit over the top. the guy actually hasn't committed any crime, and the fact that receiving stolen property was treated so harshly in itself was a reflection of the times and the views about property and the sanctity of property ownership, whether it be something like a camera or something. So that's changed a lot, as you can imagine, over the years. There was another case as well where a guy had, and again, I'm remembering the adults talking about it here, but I remember a guy who had something happened, like his mother had got sick or something like that, had suddenly gotten ill, and he must have been a guy that lived paycheck to paycheck, but it was, for example, it was the Thursday and he needed to go straight away. The payday was Friday, and he'd asked the manager or the boss, whoever it was, could he be paid a day early? But the boss, no, you can't. And so the guy who had access to like the petty cash tin or something like that, he took $10, whatever it was a small amount of money, or we'd certainly view it today. But he wrote out a detailed IOU saying, look, I've taken this money because my mother's sick. I need to urgently get there. I haven't got enough, but I'll pay you back. Please deduct it from my pay tomorrow. And off he went. And he was arrested for that. And I think he got a good behavior bond for it from memory, but it's treated very seriously. And why you'd even call the police over something like that's quite beyond me. But why the police would want to deal themselves into such a petty matter like this, again, is beyond me. But they did. He was arrested and dragged in front of the court, but didn't get a custodial sentence. And we look at it today and say, gee, that's really trivial. I remember another one where this younger listeners may not know this, but there was a time before email and internet and everything where the only way of if you wanted to send something in writing, other than say faxing and that's, but even before those days, was you'd send a letter. You'd write a letter, and nearly all businesses kept books of stamps that they'd buy from the post office. 10-cent stamp you'd put on an envelope and send off your letter, and businesses would use it for things like sending out invoices and that sort of stuff. So most businesses kept a book of stamps, or varying stamps. And it was a guy had been sending out his own mail using the firm's stamps. And again, I was a kid, so I'm going from sort of memory here, but the guy, and the way the adults around me at the time spoke about it, the guy might as well have murdered half the population of the world. The way it was spoken about, spoken about in sort of guttural, hushed whispers about what a low-life moral, what a creature, what an asshole. Gee whiz, he actually used stamps and he put them on his own envelope. Oh, the end of the world is nigh. What's going to happen? Jesus save us, and that's it. So it was a minor thing, and again, you'd think that the company would say, hey buddy, maybe fire him or something, but say, hey buddy, we wonder where the stamps have gone. You owe us $2.50 in stamps or something, whatever it might have been. They could have easily dealt with it, but no, this was a serious matter. It was property, it was theft. The police had to be called, and sure enough, detectives came around. It was investigated, and the guy, I don't know if he was imprisoned or something. I think he was actually, but that was then. So now, not too many years later, those things are just not cared about. You can, in San Francisco, you can steal $900 and something worth of stuff from a shop and walk out with it, and no one, and the police aren't interested. No one cares. You try and stop the people robbing the place, you'll probably be arrested. So the whole concept of the law, or what's criminal and what's moral, has changed. So if you steal $949 from a San Francisco shop, nothing to worry about. Go ahead. But if you use the N-word against someone, or you misgender them, or don't use their preferred gender pronouns, then you're the lowest. You're the lowest of the low, and you're an asshole. You're a scumbag asshole. you are a fascist Nazi scumbag asshole. So this is the difference. Now, back in the the day when people were getting arrested for using stamps and receiving a stolen camera or something like that, the difference couldn't be more stark, which is why I've picked this sort of period of time. But back then, if you'd used the N word or other words that today would land you in front of a judge, if you used the words, no one would even give a second's thought. It was standard vocabulary, and people didn't see it as what today we would say, racist or anything like that. It was just a word that was used. And if you look at some of the literature from, say, the late 1800s and early 1900s, you can see a vast and colourful use of language that today, or mundane, not colourful, mundane use of those words and references to various people from various parts of the world, and it wouldn't raise an eyebrow then, but today, those books getting burned. The people that use those words can find themselves up on charges. So property doesn't matter anymore, or nowhere near to the extent it used to, but hurting the feelings of black lesbians does. So that's how the laws changed. So, but now you can say that it was harsh to imprison someone for using stamps or that, and it was, and there was no need, in my view, no need to get the police involved in any of those. But that's only my take, and I'm looking back at it as an adult today. But it was obviously viewed very differently by the adults around me at the time. They viewed it was not simply illegal, but sinful to do what those people did, and so there was an element of fire and brimstone that they'll get their retribution when the judgment day comes and that type of thing. So, but the change in the law has been just huge. And moving from the video I did earlier on tonight was that it's now become very ideological, and what someone's done in terms of causing physical injury or injury to property, that really doesn't matter anymore. The issue is the ideology, and that's where the prosecutors get all excited and go chasing after people. And as an example of this, if you look at say the murder of or not murder, the death. Let me just couch this carefully. I was using their language there for a moment. The death of, say, George Floyd, who was off his face on lethal amount of drugs, and was probably going to die anyway, and was also a convicted criminal with a history, just tried to pass an illegal note, and so on, was not cooperating with police, was refusing to cooperate, and these sort of things, and yet the officer got a life sentence. You've got to be kidding me. And another case at the moment with Kyle Rittenhouse. Now he's clearly being chased and threatened and assaulted, and he defends himself, but he's being dragged into court. Has anyone else of those riots been dragged into court? It's only him that they're singling out. That's clearly not justice of any sort of justice anybody knows. It's purely ideological SJW justice, which is being used to divide us as a society, which is the purpose of these laws today, which is why the elites want them. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.